start. Are we ready to go, Miles?
Yes, will I, Chair?
Excellent. So I will start off by reminding everybody that this meeting is webcast, so I think everybody is sat in the right seat with the name, so it's properly recorded for the webcast. Thank you, everybody. You've passed the first challenge of the day. The next challenge is delivering a report whilst eating a donut. So we'll go on to that later. Okay, I'm going to start off by just going to the formal items at the top of the agenda. And first of all, Miles, are you going to do apologies for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillors Imran Khan, Kayleigh Brooks and Peter Kilbane, and members Asma Iqbal, Mark Cassie, Lee Viney and Bill Jones, with Joanne Patrickson kindly attending as his substitute.
Thank you. I'm going to look to the committee and see if there's any declarations of disposable pecuniary interest, please. I don't see any, thank you. There's no items, item 3, there's no items exempt. I'm just going to turn again to the committee just to review the minutes of the last meeting. And if everybody is happy with those.
Can I just know, I wasn't mentioning that I wasn't in the meeting.
Okay. Great, thanks, Neil. I'm sorry I wasn't on that occasion, so thanks to Councillor Courtney for chairing. So, if everybody has had a look at the minutes and everybody is happy with the minutes, we can agree those. I'm going to move straight on to item 6, which is the State of the Region update, Pete, and I'll hand over to Peter for that, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the paper provides an update on indicators and analysis relevant to the economic agenda, and we're asking the committee to note the key messages from the analysis. The update contains two main items. So we've got a State of the Region item that summarises progress against key indicators set out in the local growth plan, and also we've got a second item that relates to growth hubs, which summarises recent analysis focusing on the pattern of growth at small area level within local authorities. So I'll briefly run over some of the key points. Starting with State of the Region, first of all, productivity. As the local growth plan makes clear, West Yorkshire's productivity gap is the principal cause of the region's economic deficit with the national average. And the positive news is that West Yorkshire has reduced the gap in the period between 2019 and 2023, as regional productivity has grown faster than the national average. Indeed, the trajectory that we've seen is above that required to meet the local growth plan 10-year target. An obvious caveat to that is that it's a short period and a relatively atypical one for the economy. Looking specifically at 2023, which is the latest data we have, West Yorkshire continued to improve, but that was partly due to reduced contribution from labour inputs rather than output growth. And that suggests that at least partially the productivity convergence was driven by lower productivity activities falling away rather than an increase in new productive areas. And that could have been linked to the energy shock that hit the economy in that year. Turning to employment, the number and proportion of people in employment in the region is also a key determinant of economic growth. We provided an analysis of West Yorkshire's employment rate based on administrative data. We use this data source because we believe it's more reliable than the ONS survey-based measure at local authority level. And that picture shows the continuing employment rate gap with the national average with little sign of convergence. And that deficit is equivalent to 75,000 fewer people in employment in real terms. The next indicator relates to qualifications. The availability of skills is central to driving productivity growth and its role set out in the local growth plan. West Yorkshire currently underperforms the national average on the proportion of the working age population with higher level qualifications at level 4 and above. Monitoring the trend in the region's qualification profile is quite difficult because we've got a break in the data starting in 2022, but there is some evidence of improvement in the proportion of the working age population qualified at level 4 and above during that period. We still have a significant number of people in the region who are either lack formal qualifications entirely or hold the highest qualification below level 2. Combined, these groups amount to nearly 180,000 people in the region, and at 12.5%, the proportion with no or low qualifications is above the national average. The evidence also shows that innovation is central to driving productivity growth. In the paper, we've set out data around R&D expenditure, which is a useful proxy for the level of innovation activity being undertaken by business. This level of expenditure in West Yorkshire has remained stable in recent years, but it's relatively small as a component of the economy compared with the national average and some comparator areas like West Midlands. In a sense, this is a structural issue since R&D activity is heavily concentrated in specific industries that are not strongly represented in the region, and this points to a need to diversify the business base of the region and move existing businesses up the value chain. So turning now to growth hubs, first of all, apologies for the terminology, which is potentially confusing in a sort of business support context. What we're focusing on here is patterns of growth at small area level within local authorities and identifying high growth areas. This analysis originates from a previous paper which focused on the contribution of the region's main urban centres to the region's economic growth, and which flagged the importance of Leeds City Centre. Local authority colleagues were keen to extend the analysis to cover the full region. We've defined growth hubs as those small areas that have seen average annual output growth of more than 2.5% over a sustained period. And by small areas, we mean mid-layer super output areas, of which there are 299 in the region. These growth hub areas account for 1/3 of the region's economy in output terms, but their contribution varies at local authority level, partly reflecting the overall growth performance of each local authority. So growth hubs contribute 15% of Bradford's economy in out terms, but more than half of Leeds' economy. As well as being fast-growing, growth hub areas also have relatively high productivity and rapid employment growth, and are founded on concentrations of medium-sized and larger businesses. However, the picture on productivity growth is more mixed. They're also characterised by industry specialisms that are broadly reflective of their parent authority. So, for example, finance and insurance in Calderdale, transport and distribution in Wakefield. But overall, we believe the analysis provides an improved understanding of the spatial pattern of growth within the region, looking beyond the main urban centres, which we'll look to develop further. So that concludes that element, Chair. I think I've also been asked to provide an update on adult skills. Yeah, shall I?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I can find it. Bear with me a second. So, just linking to some of the headlines about the skill challenges in the region, we now have an updated picture of adult skills delivery in West Yorkshire, and the overall picture is one of more residents from diverse communities with health conditions and from the most deprived neighbourhoods benefiting from funded education and training. The forthcoming Adult Skills Annual Report will provide full details, but the headlines show the difference the evolution of adult skills funding is making in West Yorkshire. In recent years, we've seen a steep rise in costs associated with the delivery of adult skills provision. As a result, there were fewer learners supported in 2024-25 compared with the preceding academic year, but the funding still supported 37,900 learners, with 91% of those learners being fully funded. Priority learners up 7 percentage points on the previous year. Other highlights from the report include the following. Essential digital skills starts grew by more than 60% year on year. There were 15,900 new learners, 43% of the total from Index of Multiple Deprivation Decile 1, the region's most disadvantaged communities, and this is significantly higher than pre-Devo and previous years within the sort of devolved period. In Bradford, 56% of new learners were from IMD Decile 1. So we encourage members to read the full Adult Skills Annual Report when it's published later this month. And that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any questions or comments from anybody, please, on what Peter's presented in the report? Neil. Mandil and Neil, please.
The information is really useful and welcome. On the growth hubs, obviously, I think 40% nearly of the economy depends on them and a third of all jobs. Have we got the data that tells us which businesses are in each of those growth hubs? Because they are the larger businesses, so making sure we're aware of who they are and what challenges they might have will help us to protect that business and that work.
So the analysis we've done so far looks at, we have the data around the size of the businesses and their characteristics, but we can link it across to sort of business databases based on their location to some map specific businesses across. So that is the next stage that we could take, certainly.
Thank you. Neil, please.
Thank you. I guess a related question. So the growth hubs analysis is related to medium and large businesses. I think I picked up, Peter. So if that's the case, is there an equivalent analysis or of the almost the inverse of that? So we see the importance of growth hub clusters, if you like. It will be interesting to compare against the broader picture that's the, as I say, the 1 minus effectively population as well.
So just to clarify, so the way we've identified the growth hubs is just on their sort of growth performance, sustained growth performance since the financial crisis, effectively. The point we've made is that medium-sized and larger businesses sort of disproportionately represented in the growth hub areas. So they're not solely founded on medium-sized. We still have smaller businesses in there as well. It's just that it seems a lot of the growth performance is driven by those medium-sized and larger businesses.
Thanks. So just a follow-up question. So in the case of Calderdale, for example, it'd be quite easy to imagine, as I think the analysis draws, that the local economy is heavily reliant on a small number of large employers, but that effectively, I wouldn't want to think that we concentrated all of the policy thinking around that just because, we've got all of our eggs in one basket in one small town that's heavily dependent on that. So I suppose I'm just looking for a bit of reassurance or comfort as to how we look at the rest of the whole as well. I think in cases where that might not be almost as black and white as perhaps the analysis suggests.
Yeah, I think first of all we'd say this is a sort of contribution to the evidence base. It's not a recommendation that there should be a sort of overwhelming concentration on these areas. I think Calderdale's a bit of an atypical example because it's a relatively small economy. The finance and insurance areas are very important. If you look at the other local authorities, they have more growth hub areas and concentrations as well. So the picture's slightly different across the region.
Thank you. Barney, please.
Yeah, I suppose it's just thinking what this actually means. I mean, and it's that cause and effect thing. So are the high growth businesses in urban areas because urban areas create high growth, or actually do they move into the urban areas because they're high growth? And it's probably a mix, but understanding that then helps us understand, well, what does this mean and what do we do with this data, I suppose?
Yeah, and I think that's a good question, and those sort of dynamics are probably something we need to explore further. I mean, the data that's readily available doesn't make that easy, to be honest, but there's probably potential to do it, looking at sort of individual companies and their sort of dynamics and behaviour over time.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments? I don't see anybody. Thank you, Peter. and the recommendation is that we note the report, which I think we can do, and then we'll move on to item 7, please, Felix.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will introduce this. My colleagues Sarah and Michelle might come in later, depending on the response. We put this paper in just to make sure members are fully cited on the investment program that we are proposing to the combined authority, which meets around this time next week. And if the authority then gives, the CA then gives us the approval, this is what we are proposing to embark on for the spending review or the integrated settlement period. You will see in the paper, we've not gone into too much detail here, but we've set out, for example, in employment and skills, that we're looking to focus on youth unemployment and needs. We're looking to work with employers to understand how we can de-risk hiring, so to speak, given the challenges in the labor market right now, with a lot of entry-level jobs disappearing and graduate employment also reducing quite significantly, just to explore what it is that, if there's a role for us to play, what is that role and how we can do that together. We're proposing investment into Employment West Yorkshire, which is our framework, our infrastructure for supporting people into jobs, as the name suggests. In recent years, we're doing a lot through that for or with people who have health conditions and who are currently economically inactive. Unfortunately, the number is growing and there's a lot more work to be done. There's a lot of investment that has gone into that. In business, we are proposing to focus on delivering the cluster action plans, which you considered and has been approved, and this allows us to have a bit more funding to be able to focus on that. We're going to talk about international strategy shortly, and the funding, again, the program allows us to focus on that in inward investment, trade, place marketing, etc. We also have made provision to be able to work with businesses around supply chains, innovation. There is capital investment to help us work with businesses when it comes to accessing finance, to be able to invest, to adapt or adopt technology, to be able to improve their productivity and to grow. Hopefully this gives you a sense, sorry, losing my voice here, gives you a sense of, or a flavor of what we are looking to do in the years ahead. There's also provision in here in the paper for us to focus on creative industries. West Yorkshire is one of the priority places selected by government when it comes to creative industries. So through integrated settlement, we've been given funding. We do have flexibility, but we are proposing working with, seeking agreement from the CA to be able to focus specifically on creative industries and spend the money, their revenue and capital to grow that, because we have a competitive advantage in that sector. You will note that in all of these areas, at some point along the line in the last year, and we'll talk about regional learning and creativity strategy shortly, the policy and strategy work has happened with you, and this is funding that allows us to now go on and deliver that. So with your support, we've developed the cluster action plans. This allows us to do that. With your support, regional learning and creativity coming through, strategy coming through today, international strategy coming through today. It's a lot of work that we've done on the reviewing and renewing our growth hubs and the model that we've been using there. This allows us to fund that in the years ahead, etc. So across access to finance, we've changed our posture completely. And again, with your help, we've been able to get a model approved. And through the investment program that we are proposing, we should be able to begin to roll out the delivery of that. So hopefully this gives you a sense of the journey we've been on, doing the evidence work, local growth plan, moving on to the action plans that I've just talked about, and now investment for us to begin the delivery. So I'll stop there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix. Are there any questions from anybody, please? Sarah and then Graham, please. Thanks, Sarah. Graham, please.
Thank you, Chair. We're a bit concerned about the adult skills allocation because it doesn't provide us enough funding to sustain the high quality, hyper-local delivery that we've built over the years, particularly around the skills boot camps. So I think the overall ask is if we could look at the integrated settlement and see if there's some more money that can be put into the skills domain, because as we've seen, unemployment is now rising and is probably not quite peaked. So we need to start getting money into training, so that when it starts to fall, people are looking for jobs. We have a trained workforce. It would seem, from our point of view, that trying to cut education, the skills training budget at this moment in time is probably not the best time. It's probably the time to actually invest and be ready for the upturn.
Thank you. I want to pick that up.
I'll go, and Michelle might also want to go. Thank you, Councillor Courtney. This is a product of a lot of work with all partners, so we're glad that you recognize that. We take the point on the foundational economy and the everyday economy. Depending on the literature you read, things swing from one terminology to another, but we understand what we mean there, so thank you very much. Councillor Turner, the point you make about adult skills, I mean, we've made representations to government for years, every year, about funding for adult skills. Last year, a couple of years ago, we increased the intervention rate or the funding rate so that our colleges could continue to do what they had to do. Of course, if you're spending more per person, then you're able to support fewer people. Last year, the government cut our budget by 3%, 3 and a bit percent. This year, our boot camp funding has gone down from 7.5 million to 2 and a bit million pounds. So we are with you. We hear you. We agree. We completely understand. But the envelope we've been given is at best standing still and does not respect inflation. In some respects, is going down. On the plus side, and I know that is not, on the plus side, for the first time in a while, we are being given some capital to support our colleges because we know there are some significant challenges there in terms of the space they need or they have, and the equipment that they need to have to be able to do what they have to do. As always, it's nowhere near enough. And so we know we are going to be oversubscribed several times over. We do have some funding for construction skills as well. So there is some funding in other places, but overall the budget at best is standing still and it's not index linked. So we completely agree and we'll continue to make the representations to government. Michelle, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that's clear, and yeah, thank you for picking up that point in the paper about the boot camps allocation cut. I think it's great that you brought it to the attention of this committee.
Thank you. Would you like to come back, Graham?
Just to go back to the construction boot camp type thing, we've been investing heavily in that with Kirklees College. It's been really successful, and you know, would like to. When you go to lobby government, we need the construction industry is desperately short of people, and it's not just short of bricklayers; it's short of people to manage the big equipment, to even dig the holes. So that is really important, because if we're going to build the amount of houses the government want to, we can't do that unless we get some huge investment into those young people or adults to learn the new skills, because we haven't got enough people to build those houses. So that's just a point to pick up with government, is if they want the 1.5 mil houses, they need people to do it, and we haven't got enough, and there's no evidence at this moment in time, unless they get their act together, that we're going to get there, because we're all trying as best with our partners in colleges, but we just need a bit of help, really.
Alex, please.
Yeah, just I think the four priorities are really good. I guess is the word I'll use. Have you got a plan, or when are you going to get a plan, or how is that plan going to be consulted under what those four things, those four priorities are going to include? Because obviously there's a lot of activity in the NEET and youth space, in the apprenticeship space, and I would also argue, controversially, the CA are probably not up to date on what's happening in the apprenticeship world as they could be or should be. And I think if the de-risking for employers and demystifying apprenticeships is one of your target areas, that knowledge and awareness probably needs to be quite prominent, I would argue. And then the other area that I think is probably slightly missing but could fit in the de-risking is around how you're supporting employers to take on those through ex-offending routes or the rehabilitation of ex-offenders, and also, I guess, criminal justice system and that some of those intervention activities as well. Are they included in that de-risking?
Thanks, Alex. Well, firstly, I'm going to interpret that as a generous offer to help advise and develop activity, because you're absolutely right that these are problems, aren't they, and areas that as a region we need to focus on. And what we want to do is to gain that consensus that these are the areas to focus on. And then you're absolutely right that there is a significant amount of partnership working to do in order to develop interventions. And there's a lot of expertise around this table, and we hope that when we reach out to you and colleagues that, you know, that we will be able to work together across the region to develop interventions to address some of these problems. And thank you for mentioning ex-offenders. I think you're absolutely right that when it comes to this issue about sort of caution to hire at the moment that we are seeing, and I'm sure will be mentioned a couple of times today, it is those that are the most disadvantaged that are the most impacted by that caution, and so that's a group that is worth considering as part of package of interventions.
Thank you. Diana, do you have your hand up? No. Okay, sorry. Mandy, please.
Yeah, can I just pick up on the point about ex-offenders and those within the Prison and Probation Service? I chair the Yorkshire Prison and Probation Service for connecting offenders and ex-offenders into work. So if there's anything I can help with on that, I'd be really interested in finding more employers, because the funding doesn't just come to the Combined Authority, it also comes to the Prison and Probation Service too. So there's probably more we can do in that space.
Thank you. Martin, please.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I welcome the distribution and the proposal here. I think I'm particularly aware, working for a university, about graduate unemployment rates at the moment, which I think are the highest since pre-COVID. So I think anything to be done in terms of supporting graduates into work is really welcomed from a higher education perspective. The second comment was around the amount of support around growth priority sectors. So am I correct to say that there's additional funding streams that are not included in this report for those priority sectors? And can you give us an idea in terms of, in total, the type amount of funding that's going into those priority sectors? Because ultimately they're the future for the region, and they're going to drive growth, inward investment, creation of jobs as well.
Sarah, please.
On the sectors point, so you're absolutely right. This report only sets out the bit we've got a decision to make about. There is wider funding going in, so investment zone being one of them, UKR local innovation partnership funding, all the Made Smarter activity, all the work that's coming down the line on the professional business services in terms of innovation hubs and Made Smarter, which if I kind of add this up in my head, it's probably around 60 million actually. So if you look at it in a kind of totality, and then there's the creative industries part to that as well, which can kind of add on to that.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Neil, please.
Thank you very much. Just picking up on Councillor Turner's point, I think the construction skills numbers are very well documented. The same could be true in volume terms to a lesser extent for manufacturing skills as well. It seems to me that FE colleges already recognise the systemic pressures and constraints that they operate within. The risk is noted in 4.1 about reduced funding, but it seems to me here that if we are, effectively we have less money available to throw at the pre-existing problem in an existing constrained environment. That seems to be a very significant risk to the plan, and I guess I would wish for us to be perhaps a bit more explicit and mindful about the different approaches that is going to require in order to overcome it. So, you know, if we've got a third of the funding, there's a national problem with the system. The risk is very high to me if many of the sectors that we are looking to support, which I think are bob on actually in the plan, already have these pre-existing issues, and we're then funding through them a system that kind of isn't working at the moment with less money. So I suppose just a comment on the mitigations to that risk, please.
Thanks, Neil.
I'm not quite sure I understood the question.
Okay, right. Shall I go
If you don't mind.
Okay, FE colleges will say there is a systemic problem with meeting employer needs in skills in, for example, manufacturing, but construction would also be true. So we've noted that we have less money available to put into adult skills, and we rely on FE colleges as delivery mechanisms. We're building a plan based on key sectors, which include some sectors which are facing those skills shortages. We've noted in the paper that there is a risk that we may not be able to meet the ambition, but to me, it sounds like that's a very significant risk. Because of the pre-existing systemic problem, funding more people through it, or funding people through it with less money, is very likely, or much more likely than before, to produce that problem. So the ask was really, I would be more comfortable if we were being mindful consistently of the different approaches which Michelle referred to, for example, as to how we might overcome those funding constraints, given the pre-existing problems of the system.
Thanks for going over it again for my slow brain this afternoon. Some of us have been in this business for quite a while. Even during ERDF, ESF days, I don't think anybody ever felt there was enough money going around to deal with the challenges we were facing. So that's even more acute now with the state of the economy, etc. We've made some choices. So we're focusing on 6 priority sectors, and we are putting a lot of our efforts into that. Now, in another conversation, somebody will say, "Oh, well, but you should focus on this or focus on that or focus on that one." It's quite difficult. But we've made some choices, and we're going to focus as much as we can on the 6 that we're working on, which are aligned to the government's IS8. So there's some choices there that we've made. When it comes to construction, that is a national issue because of the government's house building target and ambition. So Leeds College of Building is, and Diana sat next to you, knows a lot more about it than I do, is a regional hub for construction technical excellence college. And we've got a number of spokes, so to speak, around the region, and there is specific funding going to them. It's never going to be enough, but there is funding going through that process, some of it coming through us, to ensure colleges have the resource to be able to do what they have to do. I suppose what I'll say, though, is, and there are experts in the room who will quickly correct me if I'm wrong, so get ready. Part of the challenge in construction is not that we don't have enough supply of people coming through, taking up opportunities. We're actually inundated, and colleges are having to turn people away. There's a big challenge with conversion. After people have gone through and gone the qualification, they're not getting jobs in the construction industry. Even though the same construction industry has God knows how many vacancies. There is a challenge there, which is not of the colleges making, it's not of the learners making, it's an industry problem about how they recruit, where they go to recruit, etc. So we have a challenge. Not every challenge has to be fixed with money, with investment from the combined authority or other partners. We do have a challenge in the system as you pick up. But it's not necessarily a funding issue for all of it. Some of it is. But we are making some choices in terms of the sectors we focus on and some of the issues that we are going after in our conversations with our training providers and with the colleges. But the point you make is spot on. There's never going to be enough money.
Thank you. Diana, please.
So I was going to mention the technical excellence colleges. Now it's really important that we celebrate the really positive things that are coming into the region as well. So the fact that these college buildings secured that, that's high profile for us. I will always argue that there's not enough money in colleges. There's not enough money in capital for the buildings in which that we need in order to deliver the level of training that's required. But the ask that I would bring back to the table is about how employers work with colleges, and so a lot of the resource, a lot of the specialist skill is in business, and colleges are very, very good at working with businesses to make sure that we maximise the impact that people can have, and particularly where you've got people who are coming maybe to retirement and companies are seeing that those skills are going. It takes that longer view to think, well, okay, so this person's going to go in a year, but actually if I were to use a day of their time for this last year that I've got them and work with one of the colleges, we could train up the next generation of people to come through. And I think it's that collaboration between employers and the colleges that will help us to address something which is, will never be addressed fully through the funding. We'll never have enough money. We need to be more creative in the ways that we do that. And I think any employers who've worked with colleges, and you were talking about some of the projects happening over in Kirklees, know that colleges are very accommodating and they will work in very, very flexibly with employers to make sure that there's a pipeline of talent coming through for them.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to come in?
Yeah, there was a...
Natasha, please.
Hi. I would echo that, again, not enough funding with the VCSE sector either, just to add that one. But what I thought would be quite interesting, the Appendix 1 is really good and really helpful, actually. It sets things out. I wonder whether actually putting the length of time the funding is in place for would be really helpful as well. Just, it sort of helps us understand what we can evaluate as well, because some of the problems are that we don't have enough time to evaluate. Yes, we've not got the funding, but actually to help us inform what's working really well and what we can continue doing, what we need to stop doing. I think we really need we need that longer period of time, which we don't always have. But it would be interesting to actually put down the time frames for the funding that we've got so that we can manage that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's good.
we can do that.
Lots of nods up here. Anybody else want to come in on this paper, please? Last chance, I don't see anybody. Okay, so I'm going to turn to the recommendations, which is that we note the update and provide comments, which I think we've done very well. Thank you, everybody. And if everybody's happy with that, we'll move on to item 8, please.
Good afternoon, thank you, Chair. So item 8 presents the Region of Learning and Creativity Strategy for the committee's consideration, summarising the strategic context, the consultation that's been undertaken, the core purpose of the strategy and the intended outcomes, and sets out how this will align with wider regional priorities. In addition to this, the paper also includes the proposed key messages for the West Yorkshire LSIP, which were included in the pack. Unfortunately, the Western North Yorkshire Chamber are unfortunately unable to join today. So I'll give you a bit more context to the Region of Learning and Creativity Strategy. So this strategy follows the ambition which is articulated in the Local Growth Plan and the Mayoral Manifesto commitment for West Yorkshire to be a region of learning and creativity. It's been in development since the autumn through wide consultation with a range of stakeholders, and members attended an initial private session in September with a more in-depth one in January to provide some comment and steer. So thank you to members for their enthusiastic engagement with the process. The strategy presents a 10-year vision for how the ambition in the local growth plans will be achieved, and it encompasses the integrated settlement outcomes to support more residents with the skills to lead fulfilling lives and access good work, and to increase business productivity to support growth, prosperity and thriving communities. It also links to the more specific plans that sit underneath the strategy, which detail the how this will be achieved. So it sets the direction of travel, describes how we will get there together, and then demonstrates how regional investment will deliver for people and places locally. So the full draft strategy is in the pack, but just a few headlines just to draw your attention to in terms of what this strategy shapes and sets out. So it's shaped around 4 key themes, which focus on key groups and stages of life, with some key outcomes mapped against these. So Inspiring Futures focuses on young people, with particular action on youth unemployment and NEETs, and some metrics that we've put in there for discussion around youth unemployment. The second section is around fulfilling lives. So this is about making sure that we have a happy, healthy workforce, and also it really directly makes the link from the local growth plan about halving the number of people with low or no skills. And this mirrors the timeline in the local growth plan over a 10-year period. And then finally, employer excellence. So ensuring that productivity is raised and good growth is supported by connecting employers with future-ready talent pipeline. And again, some metrics in there about enhancing training offered by employers and supporting increased numbers of apprenticeships. All of that is underpinned by a system that works for all, and the paper talks about some principles that will govern what we mean by this. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I'll pass back for those. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Are there any questions or comments from anybody, please? Sarah, please.
Remember to put my microphone on this time. Yeah, thank you. And we're supportive of the overall position, of the overall ambition, behind the region of learning and creativity. It's great. The direction of travel is really positive. There's much clearer progression routes, better access to learning, stronger links between education, skills, culture and place-based work across West Yorkshire. And we're very keen to help, and Calderdale to help shape how this develops and is delivered. I would just say, that's the nice bit. No, but I think officers only got the full draft of the strategy quite late on. It was on the early February, and the feedback was due back on the 16th of February, and the turnaround was really, really tight, and I think the officers are still trying to get comments from colleagues. Our VCSE consultation wasn't able to take place until a bit later on, until the end of January, so that local insight hasn't really had much chance to influence what's in the draft so far. And I think we need to be confident that the final strategy genuinely reflects the needs of Calderdale's communities and sets out clear and accessible routes into learning, training and work. It's especially important because we are behind both the Combined Authority and the national averages for qualification and skills. We've got quite a lot of people who are level 2 or below, much higher than the rest of the region. So it's really, really important for us in that context that our needs are also met within this. I know we're only a small part, but it is important for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll come in, but Michelle and Helen might want to. So thank you. We take that on board. We often work within a time-constrained environment, and so it's difficult for us to give a lot of time to this, and we've had to move things around because of pre-election period and all of that, so our time is being cut short a fair bit. The reassurance I'll give to you and colleagues in Calderdale is the team has held, 40-odd engagement sessions across the region. So it may be that the council itself and council of across the region, a lot of engagement has taken place with all our partners to make sure we get their input. You could always do more, and would love to have had the opportunity to have done some more. Officers have also had this. They might not have had the report in this written form, but they've had this for a long time. Often what happens is when we work in terms of bullet points and briefing papers and slides, and then it's translated to a paper, sometimes it could be a bit of a shock to the system. Say, oh, I haven't seen this. Actually, all the content in here, we are convinced officers have seen, have been part of, shaping, and I've had a lot of opportunity to pull it together. But we do accept we would have loved to have had a bit more time, but the period is truncated for challenge, for the reasons that I picked up earlier on. So we'll take that on board. Thank you very much. Once we go through sort of the other side of this cycle, there's always an opportunity, because these things are living documents, for us to continue to shape them, especially the actions that come out of these. We work through together, so there'll be an opportunity to shape it. But thank you. It's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. So I had quite a lot of hands going. I've got Barney, and then I've also seen Alex, Graham, Diana. So I'll start with Barney, please.
Just make a couple of really quick points and then ask my question. Firstly, it's really good to see self-employment recognised in this document. I wonder if it's possibly the first time it's actually been recognised properly in a document like this. So thank you for that. I think that's really, really welcome. Less welcome is, I said it last time we saw this idea that you're going to have in West Yorkshire going to have the healthiest residents and workforce by 2040 is just not true. And I just wonder why we make. It's good to have stretch targets, but to have unrealistic aims just becomes meaningless. And I just think we should think about that for future reports, because it does sort of put my back up a bit. And I just wonder, I just don't know why it's there. But the real thing I was going to ask, though, is that there's the aim in there to increase the amount of businesses that provide training. And it also talks about there's been a fall in in-work training. And I just wonder if you've looked at why that is and how you're going to increase in-work training. I've got some ideas myself. I think a lot of the policy emphasis over the last few years has actually ignored it and has been more about qualifications and providing businesses with oven ready workforce, which is probably unrealistic. So I wonder if you've thought about that and an offer that I'm happy to have a conversation or help with that if I can in any way.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to. Michelle, please.
Well, we'd really like to take you up on that offer, Barney. So, particularly where we can strengthen either what we've set in the strategy or what we go on to do next in terms of increasing in-work training. It is a really important ambition. We've heard your point about healthiest workforce before, and absolutely take that. Absolutely, that's fine. Absolutely take that on board. And I think you're absolutely right. There's a balance between deliverability and ambition. I did also just want to take the opportunity to say that we are really keen to get more. If there is any more feedback that Colesdale wanted to give to the report, the door is open. We'd be delighted to receive that. And if there are any case studies that you'd particularly like to see reflected in the report around good practice in Colesdale, we'd be delighted to include that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Alex, please.
Yeah, a couple of points. One kind of bit follows on from Barney's. In terms of in the Inspiring Futures, you want to reduce the number of young people 18 to 24, so it's in line with national average. In 9 years, you only want to be in line with national average. So that feels like not a very aspirational one. And then you want the healthiest workforce in the entire country, which feels like an overly ambitious, so that they don't feel like they necessarily balance. But I just think in 9 years, you just want to be in line with national. That doesn't feel hugely aspirational for West Yorkshire or its residents or employers. And then in the other bit in Inspiring Futures, at the top bullet point, you talk about all young people aged 14 to 24. And then in the second bullet point, you talk about improving or reducing those inactivity at 18 to 24, but obviously recognising that 16 and 17-year-olds have got massive numbers of need, and why your target is 14 to 20, your ambition is 14 to 24, but your target's only 18 to 24. I've talked about that one. And then the other one was around the businesses investing in providing training. You want, by 2035, that to go from 58% to 67%. Have you got an idea of what that means in terms of numbers of employers to grow? Because 6% doesn't sound huge in 9 years, but actually if that's 15,000 businesses, then that is quite a big ambition. And obviously, along with Barney, we would like to assist you in part of that training being apprenticeships or other workplace learning opportunities.
Thanks, Alex. Helen, please.
Thank you. Just taking the point on Inspiring Futures and the metrics and the ambition, This has been a very fast-moving piece of work, as members have articulated. So following comments and feedback today, it's going to combined authority next week. One of the points we wanted to make sure we were being as strong as possible on was needs, actually. And actually, in the interim, we've put in the latest iteration of the paper a neat target as well that addresses that 16 and 17-year-old point. So that the papers will be published shortly for that, but I can talk about that. So we're talking about halving the number of NEETs from 6% of the cohort to 3%. So hopefully that gives you a bit more confidence that we really are focusing on that. In terms of 14 to 24, we feel that's covered by West Yorkshire Promise and everything we want to do under there, which we need to work with partners to articulate what that will be. And in terms of numbers, our colleague Peter is very involved in the analysis and in the projections. There's further work to do, and we'd be really keen to continue the conversation about how we make sure that the realities of that and the practicalities and the how follows this 10-year strategy, because it's a 10-year, as you said. Thanks.
Thank you. Graham, please.
Thanks, Chair. We have no concerns with this. We like the report and the proposed approach. And I've got the opposite view to Sarah. My team, my officers have told us it's been a very, very thorough consultation and they're very impressed by it. So I don't know what the difference is, but we're very happy with the consultation. Well, it's Collardale anyway.
All right, maybe our office is just a bit stretched, you know.
It's been raining.
Thank you. I've got Diana, then Martin. Diana, please.
Hi, yeah, I really liked the report. I think it's really nice to have something that's so positive and sets such a, you know, there's a really strong ambition in there, but it's really positive. And similarly, the college's experience has been that the consultation's been really strong, so we very much appreciated that. It's great to see in here the commitment to address tutor shortages, which is you know, a significant barrier to skills development in the region. And one of the ambitions in here is around apprenticeships and significantly increasing the number of apprenticeships, which, you know, is a great ambition, but I'd like to see a little bit more about how to get there. And the other element that didn't come across as strongly as I would like it to is that piece around the incentivising or the selling of this to employers. And I know it harps back to what I said earlier, but the answer to this issue is very much about employers and training providers and further education colleges working together on skills development. So I'd like to see that a little bit stronger, but otherwise, you know, it's a really positive document that reflects a lot of discussions that the colleges have been part of. So thank you.
Thank you. Martin, please.
Yeah, I think this is a great document. I think from a university perspective, the University of Leeds and most universities are doing a lot of work around professional learning at the moment. So working with businesses, large public sector organisations to understand how they need to upskill or retrain their workforce. So I think is an offer, I guess, is talking to Peter O'Brien, Yorkshire Universities. We would love to engage with you more around this. I think at the moment we feel the university element perhaps isn't represented in the way that it should be, and I think it strengthens the whole plan and the whole paper and the whole approach. So it's more of an offer, actually, through myself and through Peter. We would love to be able to help do that.
Thank you. Neil, please.
Thank you. Just hopefully very quickly. Do we envisage a greater role for employers in delivering some of their own training, which it's my sense that they can do perhaps in a more practical, hands-on way to complement what training providers are able to do than we've done in the past?
Yes, please, Michelle.
So most training happens in businesses. You're absolutely right. I think in terms of capturing information, that's really difficult, isn't it? Because it's like what we know about what the public purse pays for. But you're absolutely right that the vast majority of training happens in businesses. I think if we have an ambition, it probably should be for businesses to do even more of that. and to make sure that it's great quality. So it'd be really good to understand perhaps what more they might need in order to continue with that.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, again, welcome to pick up the conversation afterwards. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Mandy, please.
Thanks. I think the paper's great. I like the part at the end that talks about what employers can do for themselves. And I think that's really important. And especially picking up on the point around young people being trained in construction but then choosing not to go into that industry. So making yourself an employer of choice is really important. And with the case studies at the end, is there a case that we put a case study for an employer making themselves the employer of choice and the sorts of things they might do, which is tied to the Fair Work Charter. But I know in my own business, if I wasn't prepared for my daughters to work on my shop floor, then why should anybody else be prepared for their children to work on that shop floor? And I think we need a little bit more of thinking like that and to help businesses with that approach to make themselves a place of choice.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come in, please? Neil, please.
Sorry, just very quickly, picking up on Mandy's point, the comment was made at the Manufacturing Advisory Board that we could consider how we compel employers to participate in some of the schemes that are going to help with that, particularly around, send those furthest from employment, retaining people who are suitably trained. So I think that's just worthy of consideration when we're moving to designing the delivery of these things.
Thanks, Neil. I don't see anybody else want to come in. Helen, anything to sum up, please?
Thank you for everyone's continued engagement, comments. We'll definitely take up the offers of support and pass back to the chair. Thanks.
Thank you. So the recommendation is that we recommend approval to the combined authority. Is everybody happy with that? Lots of comments, lots of follow-ups there, but everybody happy with that? It's great, thank you. So we'll move on to item 9, please, Michelle.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this paper, following endorsement at the Healthy Working Life Board, which the Mayor chairs, this paper seeks this committee's approval to carry out a review of employment support in West Yorkshire. In particular, we're keen to get as well as that approval, we're keen to get your steer on the proposed scope of the review and of its governance and chairing as well. So in the paper, you've got bit of background about employment support in West Yorkshire, about the proud track record, really, but also some of the challenges that we as a region still experience. The review is intended to assess the value for money of regional investment and quantify the impact of that regional investment, particularly in comparison to other parts of the country. Perhaps try and identify good practice elsewhere that we may not be aware of, and to establish a model, based on that evidence, to establish a model for integrated employment support in West Yorkshire, binding all partners together into a unified approach in what is a really, really fragmented system. Importantly, as part of that, we propose that the scope of the review should include identifying the respective roles of different parts of government. National, regional, local government all play a really important all play really important roles in this agenda, but there is a lack of clarity about the roles that they should play. Proposed governance, we've suggested that it needs to include combined authority, local authorities, various parts of government, private sector, third sector, but we'd be really keen to get your thoughts on that membership, on who you think should chair it, how it should be chaired, and on the scope of the review as well.
Thank you, Michelle. And I'll open that to any questions or comments, please.
Try not to go first.
Go first, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. So we very much welcome the proposal to undertake a comprehensive review of employment support across West Yorkshire, and we're very keen to actively contribute to its design and development. We really, I think we very strongly believe that local representation on the steering group is essential. I mean, from all sort of places, obviously not just Calderdale, to ensure that the review is grounded in the lived experience of places, which are all very different, and informed by the depth of local authority experience in delivering employability support. So I think there's the review must consider the wider impact of all employment West Yorkshire delivery, including, you guess what I'm going to say here, the broader local ecosystem of voluntary community sector, VCSE partners, community-based provision and existing council LA-led programmes that add significant value to residents. So as well as having the sort of top, it's that bottom approach as well. And I think addressing the fragmented system can't be achieved only at the regional level. National welfare, so I think on a national scale, the national welfare reform changes are also required to reduce structural barriers and to better align incentives for residents and employers and local services. So any lobbying that the combined authority can do on that front is good. I think the remarks about fragmentation don't capture the full extent of some of the strong foundations which do exist, certainly in some local authority employment support, which has consistently delivered high quality person-centred support. So I guess it's about trying to protect the bits that are good rather than diluting them in a redesign. So it's that don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So where there's good stuff, keep that and really recognise that ground level approach. Really works for lots of our communities. Thank you. But yeah, great overall.
Thanks, Sarah. Graham, please.
I just endorse pretty much what Sarah said, just with a couple of other issues. And we noticed that there's working with the DWP linked to their changes, and the timescales we feel may not align, which may cause some problems because we don't want to create a gap in the delivery. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at. The one-door approach is, we fully understand that, but we do have the foundations through the Employment West Yorkshire, and I think we think we should build on that rather than either duplicate it or change it too much, because that seems to be working. We don't want to do duplication because that's working. So we believe that that's a good foundation to build on rather than go, oh, let's go do something different, because that seems to be working. But as I said, we don't want duplication. And I said the DW timescales look a bit tricky, to say the least, given the fact that we're waiting for government, shall we say, to come back to us. But as long as those things are borne in mind, we're broadly supportive of it, along with the same comments as Sarah with the report.
Thanks, Graham. I've not seen anybody else stick their hand up. Neil, please.
Sorry, one more. I very much support the principle of the multi-tiered approach and the relevant representation from local, regional, national level. I'm sure you're thinking about this anyway, but I would just encourage you from experience to ensure that in some of the, maybe perhaps at a regional or a national level, so the national bodies are giving it sufficient credence and that we have representatives who are able to influence their system. Despite the best intentions of often DWP officers to engage, they don't have enough authority to do that consistently or systematically. So it would just be a caution along those lines, I think.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come in? Natasha, please.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to reinforce one of the areas that you've mentioned there, barriers to data, how difficult that is on the ground. It really is. The two big barriers which I've heard nationally are barriers to data and employer engagement, actually engaging the employers, those two issues. So I'm wondering whether there will be findings which we could benefit from on a national level, because these two issues keep being raised.
Thank you, Natasha. Neil, please.
Just very quickly, don't know how busy Alan Milburn is at the moment, but he's had a lot to say on the subject. Might just be worth a phone call.
Thank you. Felix, please.
Only if members are not. I thought I'll just come in at the end. The mayor is on Alan Milburn's commission, so we're working quite closely with him and with that commission already. I suppose just to reassure Councillors Turner and Courtney, this is really an opportunity for us to cement the role of Employment West Yorkshire and that piece of infrastructure we've got in the region. But to be able to do that, we need the evidence that tells us that this is adding value. So usually what we have are two types of data. We have numbers that say X 100 or 1,000 people have received support. That is great, and it's great for those people, of course, and it's good for our economy, their families. Or we got information that is more anecdotal or qualitative that gives us a bit of a story about X person went through their door, had this challenge, received this support, this was the outcome, and that's also brilliant. What we are unable to do right now is to establish whether any of that would have happened without us. Because there are parts of the country that do not have infrastructure like Employment West Yorkshire. There are parts of the country that do not spend the 7 million a year that we spend on that infrastructure. And we don't know, and there are people there who also get support, even without that infrastructure. So we want to be able to say, actually, this investment is delivering added value, and this is what it looks like. So that's the first point. So it's not to take away from what we're doing, it's to arm us, it's to confirm what everybody tells us, but we need to be able to back that up properly, especially in a world where there's less money going around. The second point is, and it goes to the point Councillor Turner was making, there's a lot that is happening in this space almost at the same time. The DWP reviewing the job centres, new jobs and career service, national jobs guarantee kicking off in a few pilot areas next month, and then the rest of the country in the autumn. There are different things happening all the time. And this is an opportunity for us to work with the national partners that Neil was talking about, and to make sure we are not doing what DWP should be doing, and that our investment is going to actually add on to what DWP or other partners are set up to do. And we are really adding value. We are making sure there are no cracks in the system, and that we can actually make DWP do more where it's in their mandate to do that. Whereas currently, sometimes, and this is anecdotal again, we know that there's a lot of referral. People go to the job center and they're simply referred to us. We may be picking up things that the DWP should be doing. So this allows us to look at this properly and to make sure we are adding value. So hopefully that reassures you. But thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come in? Can't see anybody, so I'm going to turn to the recommendations for this item. And as recommendation 2.1 is that we approve the proposal. Could I see a show of hands of everybody in favour, please? That's great, thank you. We'll move on to item 10, please, Sarah.
Thank you. So the local growth plan sets out some really clear ambitions around our international approach and to drive economic growth in the region. The international strategy, which is set out appended to this report, really provides that framework for how we will do that, how we will compete on the global stage, how we will lead on the global stage, and how we'll position the region as open for business to drive economic growth. It's very much aligned with government policy in terms of the industrial strategy, focusing on some of the key markets where there is really strong partnerships and frameworks in place, and the UK's trade strategy. And it sets out clearly where we will prioritise market opportunities and sector opportunities to drive the growth of our priority clusters. We've engaged quite heavily on this over the last few months to make sure that all partners across local authorities and wider are comfortable with our ambition. And because this is a regional strategy, it's not about just what the combined authority will do, it's how as a region we position ourselves and how as a region we maximise the benefits of that international agenda. So we'd welcome comments at this stage. It's going to the combined authority next week, but we'd welcome any comments in the meantime.
Thank you, Sarah. Does anybody want to come in on this item, please? Graham, please, and then Mandy.
Yeah, we've been obviously consulting this, and we agree with the process and the report. The only thing we're a little bit concerned about is there doesn't seem to be a lot of detail on the delivery and how that fits into the national context. But with the reduction in Department of Trade Resources, but that's the only thing. Apart from that, we welcome the report. Very ambitious, which is great, but we're just not sure on the delivery of it. But apart from that, great report. And very ambitious. Let's hope we can hit it.
Thank you. Mandy, please.
Thanks. I've just come back from a very successful trade mission in Baden-Württemberg and Zurich around advanced manufacturing, AI, and promoting the Northern Square Mile in Zurich, which was brilliant, with a large number of businesses with us. And it's definitely, it definitely paid dividends in terms of starting those relationships and starting those conversations about not only trade but investment in both directions. One of the things in the report, which I think is great, I think we need to maybe add in, and I think I may have said this previously, but is a sieve. So for those opportunities that come into our lap, we need to be able to say, when are we not going to do something? Because I think it's as important to know what things you're not going to do as to what things you are going to do, so that we don't get drawn by something that looks glittery. The other thing is, I think it's great the placemaking part of this, but in Germany, we had a number of conversations that says, a couple of people said, I don't know where Yorkshire is, let alone West Yorkshire. And so I think we do need to be mindful of the fact that whilst place is really important, and West Yorkshire is, and the individual places in West Yorkshire is, that Leeds is the known attack brand. And I think we have to have a conversation around where we use Leeds as the attack brand to help get all of us what we want for the region. I know that might be controversial, but I'd just like to put my cards on the table and say what my view is. Yeah.
No, seriously, following up on that is, you think you've got a problem with West Yorkshire, try living in a place that doesn't exist.
Thank you. Martin and Neil, please.
So I'm very passionate about this whole role that universities have in terms of attracting international investment, our international strategy. And I think that isn't reflected strongly enough in the report. So I'm very happy, again, to be involved, Sarah, with your team to help that. But if you actually think about the potential around not just attracting international students, that obviously universities are desperately trying to do in a more competitive market at the moment. If you look at our alumni network, which is phenomenal, which again isn't used in the way that it could be, a massive opportunity there. And then if you start thinking about how we attract companies to the region, and again, having innovation R&D capability there, which is accessible through universities and through the network, is an enormous asset and incredibly valuable. So I guess you probably expect me to say that, but I think we can strengthen a lot of that in the strategy, Sarah.
Thank you. Who wants to come in next? Mandy, please.
I would really like to support Martin on that, because the University of Leeds came to the previous trade mission to Nashville and Boston, and both Leeds and Huddersfield supported this mission. And actually, the way that they can help strengthen that conversation and show the quality of research we have in this region and the quality of talent, if we want to attract inward investment, is really important. Having the right people from the universities is really important too, because we want the rock stars who are going to be able to sell the region for us rather than have a technical conversation. But I think that that really does give us an asset that most other regions don't have as much of as us.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think the first thing I'd say is I think this is a really high quality strategy from the point of view of attempting to draw together various different strands of the whole economic strategy for the region. So, I very much welcome it from that point of view. It's more holistic, references to soft power, for example, using creativity as a lever for economic growth. I think this is all quite fresh and quite new. As even mentioned in Town Twinning, for example, you know, lots of existing links that play into economic potential, so that's great as well. So really well done, I think, actually on this one in terms of strategizing. I think I recognise Mandy's point as well about placemaking as well. I would say though that we have such a rich diversity of recognisable brands that you know, it's almost like we almost need to front up a particular strand of activity with something recognisable, whether it's food or drink, or you know, whether it's machine tools in some area of Germany or brass bands in the north of France or whatever it is. You know, we have a clothing and textile brands known the world over. We have a great opportunity to lead with those, you know, initial well-known worldwide recognised innovations. Yeah, so different symbols, but basically it's really welcome actually. So well done.
Thank you. Sarah, please.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point. It's like cat's eyes, you know, cat's eyes, you know, from so it's almost like who you're facing, so it's your framing. But I do take the point, and I know that we're all sort of, you know, we are a collection of some biggish. Well, you know, Leeds is a big city. The rest, I think, the rest are either small cities or big towns. And there is, I understand that there's sort of quite a lot of jostling around that. It was interesting. We had a conversation in this morning's meeting, which was the regeneration place and housing, but not necessarily in that order. Those words this morning, and we were talking about. They were talking about, you know, being on the map, and I was sort of saying, oh, we need a US, you know, an American rapper to come along to some, you know, football matches or whatever to do that sort of raising of profiles. But it's interesting, and then and someone was mentioning that Manchester is using Steve Coogan, for example, in some of it. I mean, that's obviously more of a national thing than international. But I think finding those people who've got that international, you know, can catch the international limelight, if you like, isn't necessarily a bad idea. And obviously, you know, the Peace Hall isn't Leeds, it is Halifax, but and that is really small, but actually is getting some of that recognition. So how we can manage to sort of, from a world perspective, merge some of those things together, I think is the trick. But I think having those different things to catch the eye of different people in different places isn't a bad thing.
Thank you. Neil, please.
It was just very quickly by way of illustration. It reminds me of a story that Gary Verity used to tell it about how Yorkshire won the Tour de France départ, and he was in the room with the French committee, and none of them knew where Yorkshire was in the world. So eventually, one of them piped up and went, I use a dog. And there we go, because they all recognise the Yorkshire Terrier.
Thank you. Alex, please.
Yeah, I think there's opportunity. It's really good to see strengthening skills pathways in that. I think as long as we recognise that FE and training providers and apprenticeships are part of that, and R&D doesn't just happen at university level. I appreciate it gets the grandeur, but actually some apprenticeships have some of the most innovative and developmental activity happening in them. I think there's opportunity to look at what you're trying to do on some of those other policies and papers that we talked about around investment in training and use of apprenticeships. You know, German's model is often cited in terms of their apprenticeship programme, their employer investment. Lots of other countries around the world have adopted our apprenticeship system and then didn't play around with it like we did. So now they probably don't look at it and want to adopt it, but have got some really positive strands around how they've adopted our approaches and then made it more successful than ours. So I think there is something around just recognising how they get investment, and it doesn't all have to be high level, is kind of the point I'm getting at, because Germany do some great things at those entry level roles, as do other countries using our model more successfully than us.
Thanks, Alex. Sarah, do you want to come back in?
I've got another point as well, actually. Just around the in Appendix F, the details indicators. Obviously, it's quite hard to measure quite a lot of this work or to attribute to specific actions, but it might be helpful to share baseline data and potentially set aspirational targets against which progress can then be tracked and reported. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Felix, please.
I was just going to say thank you really for the comments. It's the first time the CA has pulled a strategy like this together, and we've gone at it trying to be as broad and open-minded as possible and pick up all the angles and learn to make sure we are doing much better in terms of trade missions, but also supporting our businesses to be successful and profiling our places and making sure we get the recognition so we are known for more than a Yorkshire Terrier. It's been great, and your comments are really, really welcome. So thank you very much. We've done it all in-house, and actually it's worth mentioning Alethea sat at the back, who's held a pen on this. Alethea is a young graduate who's only joined the last year or so, and without her we could not have done this. So thank you very much. We'll take the comments on board and we'll come back. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. So are we happy to, the recommendation is that we endorse the strategy to take it forward, and is everybody happy with that? Great, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 11, please, Jo.
Thank you, Chair. So this item is to update on a recommendation from the Innovation Board to develop a new innovation plan, and also to provide the committee with a progress update on the Local Innovation Partnership Fund programme. So as a brief reminder, the Combined Authority approved the establishment of a new innovation board last September. So the purpose of the board is to provide strategic advice on innovation activity with representation from across the quadruple helix of industry, academia, the public sector and voluntary and community groups. So we've published terms of reference and membership for the innovation board, and there is good links from that board into existing groups that we have, as well as some new members that we haven't worked with previously as well. So as per the paper, it's been agreed that we will develop a new innovation plan with a clear focus on the role of innovation to boost productivity, and align that with activity that will boost R&D, commercialisation and spin-outs. So activity is underway now to pull that plan together. We've had a steer from the board to keep this simple with a clear set of numeric key performance indicators. So we are looking at good practice from other areas to see where that can help us with the development of this innovation plan, and we're having conversations with areas that are a bit further forward in their innovation journey when it comes to sort of devolved innovation funding. So Glasgow in particular is an area that we're looking to learn more from what they've done. So as I say, that work is underway, and we're hoping to pull together a draft to take to the board in April. So if I move on to the Local Innovation Partnership Fund update. So as we've discussed previously with the committee, this is a new £500 million fund from UK Research and Innovation to grow innovative clusters across the UK. West Yorkshire, as a strategic mayoral combined authority area, is earmarked for £30 million of funding. So we won't be competing against other areas for this funding. It has been allocated to be spent in West Yorkshire. As part of that, one of the requirements, and this was a further rationale for establishing the Innovation Board, is that an Innovation Board across that quadruple helix can make decisions in relation to the Local Innovation Partnership Fund, so our board will be playing that role in West Yorkshire. We've submitted a readiness check to UK Research and Innovation, which sets out the areas of focus that we want the LIPF fund to deliver activity in West Yorkshire. So that covers cluster activity in fintech, advanced materials, and with enabling activity across AI and data, which underpins particularly those two other areas, but we know does cut across all of our clusters that we have identified in our 6 cluster action plans. So there's a call for projects that's open at the moment. We are working closely with partners on this because the timescales are quite challenging. We will need to submit a portfolio of projects in May, following approval from our Innovation Board. So whilst it is a call, it's been quite tightly managed with the key stakeholders that are involved, universities, businesses, and that are working on those. So once we've had the projects in, we're working with Metro Dynamics, a consultancy, to help score those projects. They've worked with other areas on similar projects, so they'll be able to help us make sure that the projects that we have will meet that quality threshold that UKRI will be looking for. Because although the board will be approving the projects that we put forward as our portfolio submission, UKRI will make the decision on whether those projects are fundable or not. So we do really need to make sure it is achieving that quality threshold. There's also quite challenging match funding requirements for this programme, So there's an expectation that there will be a 2-to-1 private to public sector funding across the 5 years that the programme will operate, with an expectation that will rise to 3-to-1 across a 7-year reporting period. So that is quite a challenge, and so that is guiding some of the activity that we are looking at, and is playing a role in that assessment criteria as well. So I think that was the key updates I wanted to give, so happy to take any questions on either the innovation plan or the update on the local innovation partnership fund. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Who'd like to come in on this paper, please? Sarah, please.
Yeah, just usual point from us in Calderdale about, obviously we don't have any higher education establishments, so it's thinking about how that will work. So we do have an interestingly, I know Amanda's gone now, but we did have a brick house business that went on the trade mission as well, because we do have some advanced manufacturing and actually a lot of innovation going on in Calderdale. But so it's just about making might need a little bit harder work, not from you, but it's more challenging, isn't it, in order to support Calderdale in terms of innovation because of the lack of HE provision. So just bear this in mind. Thanks. But it's I mean it was interesting to see that in the Creative Places Growth Fund that there is SME loans are in there as well, and that's good. Yeah, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Neil, please.
Thank you, Chair. So just to pick up on Councillor Courtney's point, actually, as it happens, because I think my question is around how significant the Innovation Partnership Fund is in the context of the overall innovation work that's needed. So in part, it's that question about what's the other funding. So we've got a tight deadline of £30 million to produce a number of projects at the moment. That particular fund, one of the requirements, as I understand it, is about maturing the capability of the triple or quadruple helix in a particular area, which really is saying how do universities and local authorities work with businesses. So I guess what's my question really? I suppose it's just about scale and what's the approach to the broader innovation piece, which picks up what Councillor Courtney was talking about.
Yeah, so on the LIPF and coming back to Councillor Courtney's point as well, so UKRI being very clear, this is about research excellence and where we are world leading in particular areas of research excellence. So it does, mean that it will be focused in particular places around that existing excellence. That is LIPF, so that is that focus. But the Innovation Board has a broader remit to look at innovation activity more widely. So that's where it's important that we look across all parts of the region and how we can support that activity. I think there is something about how we, the board's been clear about sort of having quite a tight focus of the activity, but it's about where we align it with the other strategies that we have as well, whether that's a region of learning and creativity or wider business support activities, to make sure that those things are joining up and we're not duplicating any of that activity but adding value through the work that we're doing with the Innovation Board.
Thank you. Henry, please.
Well, I really welcome an innovation plan for the region. I think that's really important. And probably just playing on to Neil's point as well, it's been really important to reflect some of those businesses. It's a shame Mandy's just left because she'd be one of those, but there are some real, what we would call innovation exemplar champions, businesses in the region, and I think that should be reflected in the plan because I've already seen hands-on some of those types of businesses helping with the LIPF so that there is that employer engagement. We know a business well in Kirklees that is doing that effectively. So I think that'd be something really important to get into the plan and almost to get ambassadors, whatever you want, whatever name you want to give them, but those types of businesses that are very influential in their areas and in their sectors about the importance of investing in innovation. And the other point is there's loads of great innovation assets in the region. Some of those are either HE or linked to HE, but there are other ones as well. So it's not really about having a whole load of new centres. It's about being able to maximise how businesses can access support from those centres and make sure that we're right at the forefront of technology and equipment that's needed So bringing in AI and all the other areas that we need to focus on. Thanks.
Thank you. Neil, please.
Sorry, then Councillor Turner. Okay, thank you. Just as to follow up on the point, I don't think I'm mistaken, but I think the Innovation Partnership Fund call does make a specific point about maturing the triple quadruple helix, and that's really that's really the question I was asking. So to Henry's point, we have leading light businesses, but actually we have leading light businesses that nobody knows about as well. So for me, really important to have more of those businesses who are already innovating but are disengaged from what frankly is a difficult to navigate system, to be engaged with the system. So I really want to see in the innovation plan that coming through about maturing our capability to do that. Very important.
Thank you. Joe, please. Graham, please. Then.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I mean, we're broadly comfortable with the direction of travel in this, and we welcome the fact that a lot of our stakeholders have been involved in the process, and that's really positive. And we believe some of this will be focusing on advanced materials, which we, as somebody has already pointed out, we already have some of the world leaders in Kirklees in that area. So, from our point of view, it's a really positive move, and I say glad that our stakeholders have been involved. We need to keep those businesses leading this work, because there's some really potentially some really strong economic benefits from this if we get it right for the future.
Thank you. Joe, please.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just to come back to the point there about, absolutely right, this is about strengthening that triple or quadruple helix. And I think what's really been positive about the LIPF process is that, yeah, we have had those conversations with businesses, and even if there are ideas and things that come through that we can't fund through LIPF, that means we can bring it into a pipeline of future interventions that we would look to develop and bring them in to be part of the plan. So just the process has been really helpful in strengthening some of those relationships and helping to bring that through into the way that we work with partners.
Thank you, Joe. If there's nobody else who wants to come in, I'll turn to the recommendation, which is we endorse the update and note progress on the Local Innovation Partnership Fund. I take it everybody is happy with that. That's great. So at this point, I'm going to close the committee meeting, and then we're on to the briefing on governance changes.